if you expect a CV to be perfect, there is a talent shortage. If you are open to looking at various different types of people with different types of backgrounds, then there is absolutely not.
Welcome to The Fearless Foodie, the podcast that gets honest about what it really takes to thrive in food and retail. I'm Amy Wilkinson, coach, speaker and trusted partner to food industry teams with lived experience of the pace, pressure and politics that come with the job. Fearless Foodies cut through the fluff and get straight to what actually helps. And that's exactly what we're here to do. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to The Fearless Foodie. One of the things I hear constantly when I'm out speaking to food manufacturers and brands is that there's a talent shortage in the industry. But then at the same time, I'm seeing brilliant people struggling to land roles and businesses saying that they can't find the right candidate. So which is it? In this episode, I'm joined by Rich Howell, who is the founder of Marvel FMCG. And we're getting into what's really happening in recruitment right now, from age bias and the perfect CV thinking to the small hiring decisions that mean companies are missing out on really great people. If you've ever struggled to hire, or if you've ever wondered why good people seem to slip through the net, this conversation will definitely give you something to think about. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of The Fearless Foodie. Today, I am joined by Rich Howell, who is the founder of Marvel FMCG, a recruitment company. Hi, Rich.
Hi there, how you doing?
I'm good. So I reached out to you on LinkedIn, didn't I? You've got like 1 billion followers on LinkedIn. How many followers you got on LinkedIn?
I won't go that far. I think it's about 71,000, I think now, something like that.
Yeah, so you probably get lots of messages, but I popped up one day that there was a post that you'd seen, and if anybody listening doesn't follow Rich, you need to start following him, because I was just drawn in by the straight talking, which is what the Fearless Foodie is all about. And I think the post was something about ageism in recruitment, but I just really wanted to get you on to talk about all things recruitment, because once I started following you, I really got to see that you're doing things differently in your business, but you're also quite openly talking about how businesses need to change the way they're doing things.
That's true, yeah. That would be good, yeah, as well.
So start by telling, because there'll be people that don't follow you in that, even though you've got that many
Sure.
followers. So tell us about who you are, what you do, all of that jazz, and why you built the business that you have built.
Sure. I'll give you a quick whistle-stop tour then. So I've been in recruitment now for like 12 years, I think. I came into recruitment very late, so sort of early 30s, I would
Yeah.
probably say. And I think that has benefited me quite a lot. You know, I came in, I had kids, I had a mortgage, and lived a little bit, I suppose. And I think that's quite important when you're discussing careers with people, that you
Yeah.
understand some of those things. So yeah, I worked for someone for, cool, blimey, about 6, 7 years. And then the kind of that moment that happens to some people, the penny dropped, start on my own. And I had that, but it was during the pandemic, which, yeah, I think at the start you were being absolutely mental to start a business. But as things started to improve a little bit without the pandemic, we decided to start. But I would never do it. I couldn't do it on my own. So my long-suffering business partner, Lucy, joined me in starting our company. And my background's FMCG, sales and marketing recruitment. Hers is HR and talent. So it was quite a nice combination to start a business. But we started it on the premise that like no one needs another recruitment company. A lot of your listeners will probably know what I mean by that.
Yeah. And you get a bad rap, right? Don't you? Like recruiters get a bad rap. Like,
Oh, yeah. I've been to like dinner parties where people go like, what do you do? And it's like, I work in recruitment, and you can immediately see someone's
yeah,
face. You're like,
you're up there with parking attendants, like
oh, I wouldn't say, yeah. I think so. Yeah, I wouldn't go. I'm not sure I'd go that
estate
far, but
agent. Anyway,
yeah,
sorry.
maybe. Yeah, that's
I'm
probably.
offending lots of people here. I'm going to shut
No,
up.
it's fine. But I think we joke about it, but that sort of is a little bit of a thing where you want to try and prove people wrong, and I
Yeah.
quite like that. And that's kind
Yeah.
of a lot of the underbelly of what we do. But we did start on that basis, and we wanted to be different. We wanted to be a force for good, because at that time, and probably even now, we need it more than ever, and you don't see it often in recruitment. So we started off, the big thing around what we do is we give back a lot. So I came up with what's called the 1% model. So for every person we place, we donate the equivalent of 1% of that person's salary out of our fee, and it goes to charity. When I started, it was just Lucy and I. I supported the Alzheimer's Society, of which my father lost his battle with Alzheimer's 9 years ago, I think. And I always wanted to do something good for that. So I rang up Alzheimer's, basically said, I'm starting a business. Every time I play someone, I'd like to give you some money, please. And
They
went
said,
from
thank you
there.
very much.
They
Yeah,
said,
yeah,
thank you very much. Yeah. And as the business grew, more people came on board. They all chose their own charities. And I think now we've donated £230,000 to charity in 5 years. Because it got so messy, we had so many different charities, we thought, let's start our own charity. We now have the Marvel Foundation, which does lots of amazing things for people every year. So that was one element to it. Then the next was around sort of inclusivity, D&I. So I know it's a hot topic for a lot of people. But, we want to really challenge the status quo in things like that, which, obviously you mentioned around age discrimination, which is a really big thing. But, we work on the basis that a CV has a person behind it. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that. But there is feelings, there is things that have happened and stuff like that. But also, everyone deserves a great role, and we have that mindset. And then, we are a B Corp, which kind of rubber stamps everything that we do with that. So we're just recertifying now. We got a score of 109, I think we got when we did it, which is a really good score. We're really proud of that. We want to increase that. But yeah, we work with 180 FMCG brands across various disciplines: sales, marketing, HR, finance, etc., based in Gloucester. And, like what we want to do is we want to have a business where people enjoy working with us. They have fun. We're a good extension, and we keep it simple because
yeah.
a lot of people don't. And that's, I think, where recruitment can get quite messy.
It happens a lot in a lot of professions where it's like, if we make it seem more difficult than it is, then like people have to, believe this, that, and the other, where actually it isn't that difficult. But thinking about the people that are listening, obviously lots of FMCG, lots of foodies. One of the things that gets talked about a lot, like every conference I go to and stuff like that, is that they're talking about there's a labour shortage or there's a talent shortage in the industry. And then on the other hand, I see lots of people with open to work banners on LinkedIn. So like, what is the actual truth, I guess, in that? Is it both, or, can both be true at the same time?
Yeah, I've never understood why people think that there is a talent shortage, because, there's some amazing people on the market who are out of work, and some who have been real victims of restructures and, redundancies, etc., things like that. I think it's more a case of, ever since 2020, sorry, the world has changed.
Mm,
Recruitment hasn't.
right.
We have so many hiring managers and so many companies who view a CV and it needs to be perfect. It needs to be linear. You need to have done this. Whereas I'm a massive fan of, getting breadth and seeing your CV as a bit of a game of chess where you have to make these moves and you go and do different things or different experiences. And if you expect a CV to be perfect, there is a talent shortage. If you are open to looking at various different types of people with different types of backgrounds, then there is absolutely not. So I
Mm.
think it's really down to the individual how you answer that, probably, and what your view is.
But I think there is definitely something in that also, like hiring managers and stuff in businesses, they're so busy that they like are scanning things and going, oh no, like I'm just going to get rid of that one, get rid of that one, not actually thinking about how could we make it work. Because one of the things that always really frustrates me when I see job adverts and stuff is, particularly in food, where like I get that there's some parts of food where you need the technical knowledge, say like you're in, in bakery science or something like that, like you need to have a knowledge of that science. But a lot of the time it's like, oh, they've not worked with that category or worked on that retailer. And I'm like, so what? It doesn't matter.
We've got a no CV process at Marvel, which basically you do not see a CV all the way through. And some of the people we've placed have been mind blowing. Like,
Mm,
one of the best, I placed a senior NAM in grocery. She's got zero grocery experience. She managed large pub groups. She's
mm,
brilliant. I get that there is risk involved. Of course there is. And business want to, especially at the moment,
mm.
risk needs to be reduced. But I think the risk takers can get the best talent.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, if you are only ever going to look at a candidate because they fit in this certain box that feels like it's a safe box of the sorts of people you've got in your business, then you never get fresh ideas. You never get new and different ways of doing things because you're getting what you've always had.
Yeah. And I think that's part of my job, right? And my consultants' jobs are to educate and challenge. We've got a client who said to me recently, they were like, we've never been challenged like you've challenged us with previous partners, and it's made us think differently. And that's amazing that we can say that we've done that, because that's part of our objective, is to get people to think differently. Because yes, you're right. Imagine like, even just saying it out loud, a candidate put in a box sounds so like,
Mm.
ridiculous. This is a human being we're talking about, but also it's about, why would you want to be doing the same? You obviously worked in innovation and stuff like that. You're
Mm. Mm.
selling a product from 20 years ago. Why would you recruit the same way? You want someone who's going to bring fresh ideas, different sort of experiences that you can help innovate, and you can do things differently. So, yeah, I mean, I think, look, for me, it's all about, can you do the job? I don't care about the rest. Do you have the skills? Do
Yeah.
you fit the brief? Can you do the job? Let's talk.
So how do you get, so I'm thinking about, somebody that's listening and they might be hiring and they're in a business that's like, oh, we've always done it this way and this is the way we recruit and all of that sort of stuff. How do you persuade people to do things differently?
Yeah, look, that comes a lot with experience, I think, and trust. And you know, I actually say to them, look, I will challenge you on your ways of thinking, and obviously getting an example of what they've done recently. And you can, when you're a recruiter, you can get quite a good insight quite quickly into how they approach things. And look, we're all on this journey. I've got some clients who are extremely progressive, but I've also got some at the beginning of that. And that's what it's all about, working in partnership with people. And I think if someone's like very reserved and they're quite used to working the way, I would generally say, look, we can look at it your way, but just let me throw in a curveball, for example, or I mean, the modern way of interviewing now is like, you and I now, we're online. You can do an interview 34 minutes. And what I try to say is, look, you trust me to do a job, put your faith in me, meet this person, see what you think. If I'm wrong, fine. If I'm not, then you might find someone great. And I think it's always about the example and demonstrating that. So I think it's seeing it until we see it, until the hiring manager sees it. All they keep seeing is a CV.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said you don't use CVs. People don't, you don't
We do,
submit
yeah,
CVs.
we do, yeah, we do use CVs. Yeah, a lot of people did think that at one point, but
I'm like,
it's an
how do you
option.
know? How do you know if you don't have a CV? Yeah.
Yeah, so all our CVs are anonymized as standard. We haven't sent a normal CV to a client for 4.5 years, but we have an option where we will say, look, if you really want to be progressive, we take the CV out and then you're assessed on skills-based hiring. And we design that process with you. And yeah, it's really good. It kind of front loads the process more so. But yeah, you don't get to see a CV at all on that. But it's an option, not a necessity for it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's that end of the progressive. But if people are, just trying to turn a big ship that's starting to get a little bit more progressive, it's maybe just about challenging the way it's always been done just a little bit. Let's throw in this curveball, do something a little bit different. Because I know one of the things that I've seen you talking about on LinkedIn is the biases that turn up in CVs and make a real difference. So talk about that, because I think that was one of the things that really drew me to you. I think because I'm nearing 50 and I'm all right because I've
Yeah.
got my own business, but I've got lots of friends that are in are feeling that ageism, but it's not just about ageism. It's, there's lots of different things. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. I mean, if you like, for example, let's use age. That's like, for me, that is the biggest issue we have in recruitment right now.
Mm.
We talk a lot around gender, race. We talk a lot around lots of different things, but there's one thing we all have in common. We are all going to grow old at some stage, right? And we have an aging workforce, and it's a real issue.
Yeah.
It's going to be an issue in time to come. And, businesses need to react to that. And we're doing a lot of work in this space, which you'll see in the next few months. But, I get people go, we want people, there's like codes for it. I think you go,
Mm,
we want
mm.
someone who's up and coming, or we want someone who's more energetic. I've met like 55-year-olds who are doing Ironmans and running marathons who like
Yeah,
they're the
yeah,
fittest they've ever been.
yeah, yeah,
They're like,
yeah.
that's absolute rubbish. But also it's a balance, isn't it? Because if you create a business, say, for example, where everyone is under 30, where's that experience coming from? Don't get me wrong, there should be room for everyone, and you need to create that. But also, there is bias in everyone. There's bias in you, there's
Yeah,
bias in me,
yeah.
but it's just different levels of it. And what we're trying to do with the anonymized side of things is reduce that. But what I think businesses need to do is just to be open to more things like overqualified candidates.
Mm,
That's again another way for saying too old. That's a lot of the time. but you're like, there's some people out there who've got so much deeper. Why, if I said to you, I don't know, you're having some work done in your house and I've got someone who's got 20 years experience
They're a bit
versus someone who's got two,
overqualified. Yeah.
what would you rather?
Yeah,
Do you know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you put it like that, then, I think the bias comes from, my passion for it comes from speaking to so many people and understanding what they go through.
Mm,
That's one of the things we really pride ourselves on is having great relationships and putting people first and understanding that, as I said, there is roles for everyone. But when you listen to these people here of what they've gone through, like saying you're overqualified or too old or
mm.
whatever, or you've had a career gap, or, like what's wrong?
How
You don't
dare
forget
you?
how to do a job. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
it sounds ridiculous.
Yeah,
And we need, as a business, we're very happy to put ourselves out there and take a stance on that.
yeah. Because I think the career gap thing's a really good point because a lot of my listeners are women and it's not just women that have career gaps, but it often is. But I remember when we were talking before, you had an example of somebody in that whole, you've had a career gap and you're overqualified. You might even as a recruiter make an assumption of why would they go for that role? And people make this assumption of, well, they're not going to stay because it's obviously just a stopgap for them or whatever. Like, actually speak to the people and find out what the thing is because there's so many experienced people out there that actually just want better work-life balance. So,
I've got a great example where I did a category manager role and someone who was a category director applied. And I'm like, you know, that is a few steps back. There is clearly a reason behind that. Common sense would say there's clearly a reason behind that. So I picked up the phone and she basically said, Rich, I've got two young kids. I think it was like a 2 and a 3-year-old. I want a job where I can be a mum and
mhm.
still have a career, which, we are allowed to do that in
Yeah, yeah.
2026.
Yeah. Let's just pause for a moment because I want to share something with you that might be quite useful. This is something for anyone managing people early in their careers in the food industry. Many of them come straight from like really structured environments, so school, college, uni, where things are fairly clear and guided. And then we land them in this fast moving workplace where they're suddenly working with commercial teams, suppliers, customers, senior stakeholders, and they're expected just to figure it out. Things like prioritising their workload, communicating confidently, or pushing back when something isn't realistic. And for years, we just assume that people have picked this stuff up by osmosis. But the reality is, in the modern workplace, that's much harder than it used to be. That's why we created Fearless Foundations. It's a practical development program that helps people early in their careers to build their confidence, start prioritising effectively, and work well across different functions. Because if we're asking a lot from people early in their careers, it makes sense to give them the right support, which is better for them and it's better for retention and succession in the business. If you lead a team and this sounds useful, you'll find the details on the Fearless Foodies website. And if you're listening thinking this would really help me or somebody else in my team, feel free to point your manager in my direction. Right, let's get back to the episode.
And I spoke to my client, and being honest, initially they were like, not sure. But that person got a role doing on 4 days a week
Mm-hmm.
because they could do the job with their eyes
Yes,
closed,
yeah, yeah.
But my client got an amazing candidate. She was super happy because she got the flexibility. She got Friday to spend with her kids, be part of that, because let's face it, as a parent, that's time you do not get back. But we should have, as I said, no joke, we're in the modern world. You should be able to do both. And businesses should wise up to creating that. And if you do, you will get some amazing people. I'm not saying for everyone, it's not going to work for everyone, but yeah, I think that's a good example of how it can work.
Yeah. And I think that with the whole, there's a talent shortage or a brain drain or whatever you want to talk about or however you want to phrase it, I think there is definitely something for me in FMCG where we are not necessarily creating the same flexibility or working conditions. I'm thinking particularly like in food manufacturing and, not the greatest of offices or factory environments and all of that. Like, and we're competing against other industries. Like it's going to be an issue. So talk to me about flexibility because I feel like pandemic showed that everybody could work from home and that flexibility means different things to different people. And it feels like it's going backwards. Is it?
Yeah.
Is that my perception?
I think what's happened is it's kind of got to some middle ground. Like we all work remotely. I wouldn't like to work remotely. And I mean, when I say remote, don't go in an office at all. I think those people, there are a lot less of them. Don't get me wrong, there are still people out there and there are people who do that.
Mm.
But I think particularly if we're focusing on FMCG, I think what you're seeing now is an average of 2 to 3 days a week in the office, getting some balance. So we're kind of at that middle ground piece. Has it gone backwards? I don't know. I think the jury's still out on that. We've got 5 generations in businesses who all have different views, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm part of a generation where I'd have wanted it, and then a pandemic fell and kind of gave it to me, and I've embraced it. My business does 4 days a week on 100% pay. I definitely agree with it. And we come in 50% of the time. Now, on some weeks, we'll come in more, but we're building a culture. So it is important you get that. But I think if you were to say, oh, it's 5 days a week, mandatory, non negotiable, I think you're going to struggle.
yeah.
I really do. And I think businesses who make that decisions, I'd like to see where they're getting the benefit from that and
Mm.
what that's doing and what, how their hiring strategy is and what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, I always think it is a difficult one in things like manufacturing and retail, because obviously there are roles where people have to be on site all the time. But again, it comes down to this, we're humans, so actually
Yeah.
we all need different things, but it's not just like, you've almost got to think of the market for those people as a different market. If you are more office space, you don't actually need to be there. That, like, you are competing with a different market. You're not competing with another operator on a line. You're competing with other people that could go and transfer those skills elsewhere. So you've got to think about it that way.
Yeah. I'm just pro flexibility. There are multiple models that you can have that would fit for other people because I get that a lot. If I ever post on this topic, I get people mainly who are out of sales and marketing, coming at me. And I get that. And I get that. But what I am saying is, surely there must be ways you could be flexible in your role.
Yeah,
There must be.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not saying, you have to do a 4-day week because that doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't. But we should all have flexibility now.
yeah. So the 5 generation thing, what is different then? Obviously, there's a big difference. I'm thinking of people at the end of their career versus, Gen Z, who are already getting a bad rap for not being, not hardworking enough. And I don't agree with that. I don't know how you feel about that. I feel like they just want different things, and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, what don't I say I'm 44 years of age. What's important to me is going to be very different to someone who is 24 years of age. I'd imagine I've got 2 kids, I've got a mortgage to pay, whereas you may find what's important to them is completely different. So we always ask the question when we first start to talk to someone about a job is what's important to you and what will make you happy? If you find that, we're all good. If our client can give you that, great. What we're seeing a lot more now is, yes, you've got all those different things, right? But what you're seeing across those 5 generations, which is really interesting, is a lot more people choosing their careers and choosing companies based on their values. And, it could be like, just for example, oh, I've seen how my business has dealt with that redundancy. I'm safe, but what they've done to that department's really bad. That's really against my values. So actually, I'm
Mm,
going to start looking and find a company that actually, or it could be just, your purpose, for example, things like that. So what we're seeing is a lot more people across those 5 generations make those decisions, but then bringing in these things that what's important to you, it's really hard for companies. I don't
mm,
envy the big companies because when you've got like 2,000 heads in your business, like that's really tough. And I
yeah.
think but the best companies, I think, will try and accommodate as best they can. But that's a culture piece, isn't it, as well? I think if you've got the right culture and they believe in what you're doing, I think that will help the situation.
Yeah. The words around values, culture, they're all things that I hear all the time, like in
Of
terms
course,
of
yeah.
what shapes the humans within businesses and makes people want to stay. Because it's not even just about getting people through the door, isn't it? It's retention, but it's also productivity, all of that. Like, if you are motivated to work, do a good job for that company, and you probably, in you're a smaller business, but by creating a culture where people want to work, they do get 5 days work done in 4, and they probably go above and
Yeah.
beyond for you and stuff.
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from because, like, I've been there. I've worked somewhere I've absolutely hated it, and Don't want to get out of bed. I get the Friday night scaries, not the Sunday night scaries. And it's like, would I go into battle for that company? No. But if you really believe in where you are and you're behind that, then you absolutely will. And we need that more than ever at the moment, right? You mentioned resilience earlier. That's a word we hear a lot now when it comes to
Mm,
recruitment and getting people in. And the world is pretty upside down and it just
mm.
seems to keep evolving and pretty negative things keep happening. So resilience is really key.
Yeah, and I think in a world where there is so much crap going on, as a candidate, as you would call it, I guess, as an individual, you have to think about what's within your control. Because I know the last few weeks I've been really like, feeling down about everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
But what is within your control? It's within your control to decide where you go to work. And it doesn't always feel like it, does it? And you'll see this a lot. I hear from, if I have coaching clients or whatever, I hear from them a lot like, I need to stay here because I need to earn this salary. I get this flexibility in this, that, and the other, but I absolutely hate my boss. And
Mm.
I don't really agree with what we do as a company. It's like, you don't have to stay in that environment. Like sometimes you do, like, don't get me wrong, there's times, isn't there? Like probably pandemic was one of them where we kind of all had to do things we didn't particularly want to do. But ultimately, you've got one life, like don't stay somewhere that is making you unhappy.
Yeah, I work with every 8 weeks, we have 12 FMCG unemployed people that we work with. And one of the coaching sessions that I delivered was exactly that. You've got the controlled area and then the uncontrolled area, and put in what you can control and then put in what you can't control. So, example, if someone ghosts you after an interview, you can't control that.
Mm,
They're just a bit of an idiot for doing
yeah,
that.
yeah,
You can't control that. But can you control what job you apply for? Yeah, you absolutely can.
yeah,
So put that into people who are in work. Can you control being in that job? Yeah, you can. But, or can you do something about it? Yes. Can you control how your boss treats you? Probably not. Like it's just one of those. But I think that exercise is a really good thing to do for people.
yeah. So come on then, hit me with your biggest bugbears in the hiring process that you want to see changed in the world. I mean, where'd you start?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not going to be too hard on people because it is hard. Recruitment is, do you know what? Recruitment is really hard. It's the hardest job I've ever done in my life.
Yeah,
Right. But it's one I enjoyed the most,
yeah.
thankfully. And,
You
and
like a
it's changed my
challenge?
life. Yeah, of course you do. But, like a lot of your listeners will be dealing with products. We
Mm,
deal with people and they have their own minds. So
yeah.
it is really hard. And I think, do you know what? The biggest bugbear I have is candidate experience, I think.
Mm,
I think that's the biggest one. And quite a lot falls into that. But
yeah.
I think if you're talking about my overarching thing, it's like, yeah, candidate experience, because treating someone like a human being should be paramount. And it's something that we get really wrong when it comes to recruitment. Like, for example, I've worked with someone recently who is unemployed. She's been out of work for 6 months. She went to an interview and the company didn't show up.
Mm,
Right. So she basically assumed that they weren't coming. So emailed them. They didn't apologize. They basically said, sorry, it wasn't in our diaries. And then the next time they rearranged, they didn't show up again. And that person was sat on a screen on Microsoft Teams, just staring at themselves for half an hour, unemployed,
mm,
dressed for an interview. That's mind blowing. And that's that experience for that person, out of work can lead to a lot of mental health, which is a big thing that I'm really passionate about. Of can experience can lead to the impacting that mental health. So I think the biggest thing for me is treating people with respect, treating them like human beings. If that was your consumer, you wouldn't want that.
yeah,
Candidates are your consumers.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think it's something that's very, very easily fixable. You don't need AI, you don't need anything. You just need to be, how would I like to be treated in a recruitment process? Would I like feedback? Yeah, of course I would. We'll give it then. You know, it's just so simple. That's my biggest wish. And I think the rest we can evolve.
yeah. But ultimately, at the heart of it is, it's really flipping simple. Like, be kind. Well, and not just kind, be clear. Be clear about what the process is going to be and treat people like humans. And, I've been on the other side. I've been somebody that's had to run from one meeting to the next before going into an interview. And you're like, oh, flip a deck, who am I interviewing now? Kind of thing. Like, I get it. but also just having that respect that this is a human being. And like you say, somebody, particularly when people are out of work, like I saw it with my partner was out of work for a little while and he'd taken
Yeah.
voluntary redundancy and whatever. But you can see how over time it wears away at your confidence. In the same way, when you see women come back from maternity leave or some sort of career break, we all have this little wobble. It's actually, you're absolutely fine. You've got the ability, but anything that's going to make people feel even more comfortable it's just not right.
I mean, a candidate going into a process is a journey, and you want people to come back and effectively buy from you again.
Yeah.
So, i.e., you want them to apply to you again. Four people went for a job, three of them are not going to get it, right? And people know that. People know they're not guaranteed to get a job, but what they should be guaranteed is a bloody good experience and come away and gone, do you know what? I didn't get that job, but God, it was a good experience. I'm going to tell all my friends, I'm going to tell, how great that was, and I will apply with them again, and now I'm going to buy their product a lot more, so it's actually within your interest, because people, that's the thing now. Social media has massively changed the game on this, and people are aware of reputations, and I think the good ones, you can tell like what their culture's like by their recruitment process as well.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's really important for people that are listening that, aren't the hiring manager, but that might be out of work or going for a job, is remembering that it is two-way and it isn't just about you performing for them. Like, what are the clues and the red flags and all of that you are seeing about whether it's the right business to be working for? Because I see so many people that are like, I knew I wasn't really going to get on with my new boss, or I had a bit of an inkling, and it's like, don't do it,
Yeah.
because like your work is
Yeah.
such an important part of your life. You spend so much time at work. And don't get me wrong, I'm also really conscious of sometimes economically you have to just take something for the short term, but know that you're gonna, put those boundaries in.
Yeah. But I think we're all in this together. I mean, I'm very conscious that you don't want to bash every single company, but also what you do want to do is say to candidates, you're in this as well. You've got to play ball. So we're all in it together,
Yeah.
and we all respect each other's time,
Mm.
because candidates can also ghost companies as
Yeah,
well,
yeah, 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 yeah,
has been known. And just think that we're all here for one common reason, and that is to effectively find for a company to find a great person and a great person to find a great company. And if you do that, more often than not, it should work. Obviously, there's going to be times where it doesn't, and that's life. Not everything is straightforward, but recruitment processes should be straightforward. It shouldn't be overcomplicated. And the best ones do that. They keep it simple, they have momentum, and they give a great experience.
yeah. So keep it simple, keep it human, keep it clear and kind, and you're on to a winner, really.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else that we've not covered that you think our listeners should know about, that you kind of want to get out there and say to either a hiring manager or a candidate that is out there, that, we're in this like world where everything's a bit wobbly at the moment? What do you want them to know?
Yeah, having a wobbly career is okay.
Yeah.
Like you said there, everyone's a bit wobbly, but actually having a wobbly career is okay in my eyes. And I genuinely think there is more now, a movement of people are coming round to that.
Yeah.
Don't panic. That time is coming where people are going to go, hold on a minute. It is okay that that person's been made redundant. Because it used to be when I first started recruitment, it used to be that was the warning sign. They've been fired. And I was trained like that. It's embarrassing to say, but it's a red flag. Candidate's been made redundant. Why would they? Now, I've met some amazing people. So having a wobbly, unstable career, having a couple of short stints is okay. We are placing these people and they are successful. So I think one thing I would really want people to understand is my message to hiring managers is give people a chance. Like as in not saying give them the job, but see them, find out for yourself because you might surprise yourself. And for candidates, back yourself. Don't devalue yourself. Keep going and stay motivated because I think more people are seeing the squiggly career, for example,
Hmm.
and that can mean a lot of things, obviously, as actually quite advantageous. One of my clients, you won't mind me mentioning him, is managing director of Capri Sun,
Hmm.
Matt. And
Hmm.
I met him during COVID and he came up, he FaceTimed me. And I thought that's quite interesting, first up. and he was dressed as a postman. And I was like, why? And he said, you're probably wondering why I'm dressed as a postman. And he said, because I am doing that is my job at the moment. He worked for Lucozade for years, did some very senior roles, and he wanted to get some steps in. He wanted to
Get
speak to
fit.
people. He wanted to get out there and see people and just do something while he was looking for a job.
Mm.
And it actually, when he became sales director at Capri Sun, they actually said to him, because they are now it's like startup culture because they've broken away from Coke. They said to him, the fact that you've gone and done that shows resilience and you are right culturally for us. So the fact he went and did that is amazing because it's actually benefited him. And now he's MD of a massive soft drinks brand. So those types of things are cool and should be celebrated. And I know he does, so there we go.
So a great example of, back yourself. Don't worry if you've got wobbles or if you want to do something different for a bit. And for people that are hiring, take a chance on those people.
Think differently is what I would say.
Yeah. Brill. Thank you so much, Rich. It's been a really, really great conversation. So best way for people to get in touch, I'm guessing, is LinkedIn.
I get a lot of messages, but yeah, if you do message me, give me a bit of time to come back to you. But yeah, just connect me on LinkedIn and that's fine. Yeah.
I feel privileged that you got back to me quickly then. It must have been like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get my voice out there and get people changing the way they think about recruitment. So
and thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. And thank you for dispelling the myths that recruiters are all one type of person, because you're definitely not that type.
There are good ones out there. You just got to find them.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to pull out a few things Rich shared that really stuck with me. First, this idea that the talent shortage we talk about in food and FMCG isn't always about a lack of people. It's often about how we hire. So if we expect CVs to be perfectly linear with no gaps, if we write people off for a career wobble here or there, or we're uncomfortable with flexibility, we're dramatically shrinking the talent pool we're willing to consider. The second thing that really stood out for me was him talking about the candidate experience. Rich shared how that story about someone turning up for an interview twice and the company simply just not turning up. And it's easy to forget that behind every CV is a human being, often someone who's already under pressure if they're out of work. And finally, I loved his reminder about the squiggly career, something I talk about a lot. But some of the best people don't have perfectly tidy career paths. I certainly don't. Sometimes there's detours, there's pivots, there's even temporary jobs in between roles. And sometimes they're exactly the experiences people need to build their resilience and to build perspective. So whether you're hiring right now or thinking about your own career next step, there's a lot in this conversation about how we think differently, isn't there? If you enjoyed this episode, please do share it with someone in the industry who might find it useful. And as always, thank you for listening. Be bold, be brave, be fearless. That's a wrap on this episode of The Fearless Foodie. If it hit home, subscribe, leave a review and share it with someone who's ready for less fluff and more real talk. And if you're ready to build a bolder, braver, more brilliant team, come find me at fearlessfoodies.co.uk. Until next time, be bold, be brave, be fearless.